Paris, as the Italians put it so aptly. Mr. Kiss Kiss, Bang Bang, Bond. Who is it? Where are we, anyway? Nice to see you. What is this, James Bond's library?
Where are we? Which set? No, this is M's office.
Well, in M's office, I try to get Sean Connery to talk about Bond, but he says, no, thank you, not Bond. So I say, okay, for a while. I'll leave it up to him. What'll we talk about? Macbeth?
Well, I don't know. Sandy was asking me. I just came back yesterday from Sunday from Cannes. I was down there for the festival. The film I did for MGM, The Hill, was showing. You know? Yeah. And I had a press thing afterwards. It's the first time I've ever been to a festival. I think it'll probably be the last, and I've been so pressurized in my life. And they're all asking these extraordinary questions about everything, and they're coming in all different languages. We had so many different interpreters. And then suddenly, a little Greek lady screamed up and said, how did you enjoy doing Macbeth in Canada?
Kidding.
Yeah, it was absolutely extraordinary.
How did you know about it?
Well, because she had she's a family in Canada who'd seen it and had written some correspondence.
Do you remember how you figured out the character of Macbeth?
Of Macbeth?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember what I tried to do with it.
What?
Because, well, I'm young, energetic, and everything was going for him. Too much imagination, because when you have so much imagination and fantasy as he has, he can't get things on a realistic basis. And once he makes the deed, he starts imagining all sorts of things with a lot of doubt. Should I not, you know? Because, I mean, he was a marvelous soldier, yet he opened the gates and came out of the castle, and yet he says, you know, these ramparts could last forever, you know, that sort of thing is hysteria. And if he'd been absolutely realistic, he would have said, no, if they have to come for me, we can defeat them.
It always seemed to me that Bond is a kind of Macbeth who got away with it. Really?
Oh, yes,
yeah, you don't equate the two.
No.
Oh? Well, take violence as a dramatic grabber. There's an awful lot of fighting goes on in Bond. Do you enjoy fighting?
Not particularly, no. I'm sort of mad about that. Not really.
Most of the public confuse Sean Connery with James Bond. Does this trouble you?
Well, I can't be held responsible for most of the public. And if they can't tell the difference, you know, then it's, I'm afraid that's their problem, really. But, you see, I think that there's one of the, for example, there's a lot of rubbish written about the Bond things and written publicity things about myself, you know, that go out, and sometimes I read them and the hair stands in the back of my neck, and I have to sort of rationalize it out. Otherwise you would run around in hysterics trying to sort of stop that sort of rubbish, you know. But you can't. So many of the people who are involved in the publicity keep feeding it with, I mean, some of the things are just unbelievable.
Like what? Or should we...
No, well, I mean, for example, I picked up a paper, and it said that while at the premiere of Lord Jim, when the Queen was there, well, the Queen wasn't there, it was Princess Margaret was there. While she was viewing the film, Peter Finch and I were in the back alley fighting up and down the alley, you know.
Your background is Glasgow, isn't it?
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Tell me, did you learn to fight in Edinburgh as a boy?
Well, you didn't have any choice about
really
learning to fight.
Really?
Yes,
it was a tough neighborhood?
Yes, it still is, actually. There's still a lot of... No, I don't think they're quite as rough now. Because a lot of them most of the families around there have moved out to the sort of council houses, which the government's provided from the corporations, you know.
You were poor to start with?
Well, One was always aware of money or the lack of it, most certainly. You know, yes, I should say, one had never very much money at all.
Yet most of the roles that you have played are either classical roles or Bond, which is a rich, sophisticated man. Do you want to play roles which are much closer to your beginnings? Do you feel you'd be good at that?
Well, if I couldn't do that, I don't think I'd be able to do anything.
Bond is a pretty sadistic kind of character, and he's cynical. He's a man who kills other men without conscience, who makes love to women without love, and yet millions of people love him. Have you figured out why?
If you're going to sort of have a straightforward actual discussion on this character and ethics and moral behavior, first of all, how can he not be I'm not defending him, I'm just going through this, in this league that he is playing, after all, what is sort of life and death, as they say. He doesn't make any passes or make love to women who are already married, you know, which I suppose is something. Yes, well, and also the league he's in is life and death, as I say, and rather sudden. Why should he have any conscience when the people that are involved in the same league don't have conscience either?
Do you remember at the end of Macbeth, where he sums up his final philosophy of life and says, life's a poor player who struts his hour upon the stage and is heard no more, I think, yeah. Is this your philosophy at all?
Well, I don't know. It isn't actually, but that particular speech is the speech of somebody who's really at the end of everything. When the final touch was that the wife is dead and he's had all these nightmares and tortures and God knows what, and self-torture. That's his biggest problem. And he has nothing to turn to. He has no belief in anything anymore. And therefore, when the candle goes out, that's the terminus, and there's no more Macbeth. And also, he has no children, no family to follow him. So, you know, that is the end. And I don't feel like that, frankly.
Do you have children?
I have children, yeah, and the English are not at the gates of the house yet.
You're at the beginning of life.
Well, I'm halfway through. I'm 35 this year, and I reckon if I make 70, I'm doing all right.
Do you feel that you're now really at the beginning of your career?
No, I never have a notion of beginnings and middles and ends of things, I must say. I do have a feeling that perhaps this is a genuine middle age, 35, if there is such a thing.
Thanks very much, Sean.
Feeney?
Yeah. Sean Connery, the man who must be the biggest commercial success in show business history, but who wants one thing, to finish off this Bond myth and get on with real life.
Scottish International Education Trust. And I had an opportunity in doing this film, Diamonds Are Forever, for an amount of money for the trust, which I can't disclose now on the program, but it was my fee. And we'll have a press conference, I think it's on September 4th or 5th, with the announcement of the actual amount. And with this, I could launch the trust with so much money that there could never be an excuse for it not succeeding, unless the people who were involved in it and the conception and ideas were wrong in the first place, which I don't think either are true.
But is it purely a question of money and the control you can have over films, or do you still have some affection for Bond?
Oh yeah, I have no real dissatisfaction with the character as such. I would really be stupid. Although I had to take a week to make the decision myself whether I would do it again, only because after so many years, I don't know how many because I have no memory for the past at all about time, dates. It was too long to be involved just doing that, and I didn't think I got a fair piece of the cake.
You mean financially?
Yes.
It has in fact been 8 years since you first played Bond, and I wonder if in that time either the character or you have changed very much.
Well, in 8 years I'm sure I have. I would hope so. A great deal. 8 years, I'm 41 in August, I suppose, 33. Yes, I would think I had changed, yes.
How about Bond? Has he changed in the way you play him?
I suppose I'm a bit slower, not quite as fit. I hope that Guy Hamilton, the director, and myself, and with the assistance of Tom Mankiewicz, who's written the screenplay, which incidentally I think is probably the best one they've had, certainly construction-wise, for a beginning, a middle, and an end of a story. It's very good. It's a very good script. I hope it's got enough. I think that there's humour in it to do with the passage in time as well.
Is it a very faithful script to Fleming's original novel?
I have never read the novel. I don't know. I think that I only read about 3 of them. I read Thunderball, because that was the first one we were supposed to do. Live and Let Die, and From Russia with Love.
Why have you not read the rest?
I don't really know. I don't know.
Is it fair to say that with the one exception of The Hill, your films away from Bond have not been nearly as successful as the ones you've done as 007?
I have just done another film, The Anderson Tapes, for which I've got the premiere in Scotland, which incidentally has never happened in the history of the cinema business before. It's a film I made for Columbia with Sidney Lumet, who directed The Hill. And when I wanted to take the film to Scotland for the premiere, they said, well, you can't do that. And I said, why? And they said, because it had never been done before, which is very much in the vein of the thinking in this country. Anyway, we have got it. And this, incidentally, is a phenomenal success now in America from coast to coast, which is also exciting for the fact that I have the premiere for the Trust in Scotland. But that was, I was referring to that merely because he had directed The Hill too, which was the sort of, I suppose, the yardstick one would use for, considered a success for me as an actor, and quite a considerable commercial success because it was black and white.
And of course you're a businessman now as well as an actor. You have a number of interests in banking, among other things. So how important is being an actor still to you?
Well, I've always maintained anyway that I wouldn't want to be just an actor. So I'm a director of a bank. I'm on board of directors of industrial communications, and I have interest in I've got a 50% owner of a second-hand car business down East End, and I have a production company and a few other odds and ends.
Getting back to Bond himself as a character, to some people he's a snob, a bore, an exhibitionist. To others he's the great escapist hero of all time. How do you feel about him as a character?
Well, I think that I've got way past all that since the initiate Dr. No, it's like if you've made something and you leave it around and somebody picks it up, and everybody will pick it up and see it as something else or look at it in a different way. And I don't think there's anything you can do about it after you've done it. And having committed oneself to doing it that way initially, apart from a few bits and pieces and some subtleties that go in for the aficionados, it's very much the same character.
But do you think that in fact the golden Bond years of the mid-60s, when his name was on every aftershave lotion, every child's toy, are now really something of the past?
Oh, possibly. I wouldn't know. It's perfectly possible that the cycle has ended. And I'm just glad to think that we have the money and the trust.
But now, as you say, this is your own 6th Bond film. There have, in fact, been 2 without you, if you count Casino Royale.
Yeah.
That leaves, by my reckoning, 5 Ian Fleming novels still unfilmed. Is there any chance that you'll be turning up in those too?
No, No, I came back for the one. That was the understanding, and I'd do the one, and I've got other things I want to do. You know, I mean, I have no desire to have £100 million, £50 million at all. I know exactly what it is to be without money. I know exactly what money is to me. And when I know that, and I know a large percentage of myself, and I know which way I'm going.
Staying in Arlington House here in London with where our director is Kirshner, and the producer then was, and I was working with the director on the script, and one morning I came and bumped into Roger in the street, and we talked, and it was he'd just started, and the conversation was very brief, and he was with his son, and he said, where are you? I said, I'm just going off to location, and I remember it was somewhere, some dreadful town just on the outskirts of London. And he said, where are you going? And I said, the south of France. He said, very nice. He said, and then where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Nassau, the Bahamas. He said, oh yes. I said, where are you going? He said, India. And then I said, no, well, that's nice. Well, I'll see you back in London, I suppose.
But James Bond and Sean Connery are not the James Bond and Sean Connery of 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago.
Yeah, that's for sure. But he might be a bit smarter. I'd like to think I am.
You have had to put the hairpiece back on for this film. It's not something you enjoy, I know.
No, but it's only during the working day, and which has gone into the night too frequently, I'm afraid. But, well, I've stuck it on for a few other pictures too, actually.
Is this the last James Bond you're going to do? I think that's been asked before.
Yeah, I would say almost certainly, yeah. Because, well, it's 1983 before it comes out, and I'm going to take a slow boat to China. Have for me a genuine break.
The reviews on 5 Days, One Summer have been a little mixed. You have received favorable notice. Many people find the film a little slow.
I never expected 5 Days, One Summer to be a blockbuster or a commercial success. I don't think that's the nature of the picture. The subject matter, 1930, and talking about the mores of that period, morals of that time, make it quite difficult. I mean, the very opening, the idea of going off to holiday with a girlfriend, whatever your blood relationship is, you had to take a car, and then you took a train, and then you took a boat, and then you took another train, and then you took a horse cart to get to the place. Well, you could certainly cover your spurs. Well, today you just jump on one of these junkets and you're there. And the media being what it is, everybody knows.
I can't get over the fact, sitting here looking at you, and this image that you have for the Bond film, and the image of 5 Days, One Summer, which is so different. Which is closer, and I don't mean in the character, but just visually, which is closer to Sean Connery?
Well, I don't. Well, I think that you use as much as possible of yourself in both. I mean, it's certainly more external additions in the Bond film in terms of hair and makeup and detail in that sense than, say, in 5 Days. In fact, I don't think I used makeup for a lot of the scenes at all in the film, except for graying what's left, or rather whiting it a bit, because it already is gray.
I was reading somewhere, and I hope it's correct because it's a delightful story, that you had actually tried out your singing voice as the possibility of playing Daddy Warbucks in the Annie film. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
How serious was that?
Oh, it was very serious. I had
Ray Stark, and who produced the film, and my agent had conferred and then come up with the idea for me to play it. So I went to New York, through New York, and going to Los Angeles, saw the production. I liked the idea of doing it, but I wasn't convinced that I could sing the numbers as well as they're written. So I went to Los Angeles and I took singing lessons for about a month, I think 3 weeks, a couple of times a week. And then it got a bit pressured because Ray, who can become very insistent, wanted a definite commitment at the time, and I wouldn't. And something like that, it takes quite a bit of bottle, I think. Although I started in South Pacific, it's when you're in the chorus, there's so many others to put the blame on, but you get up there singing solo numbers, and unless you can do it well, there's not much point touching it.
He is now 52, firmly established by the original Bond films as a superstar, and now back playing 007, as he stated earlier in the series, for the last time. In our conversations at Luton Hoo, north of London, where Never Say Never Again was on location, Connery talked about the art of making movies.
I read Chariots of Fire, and I thought it's one of the few scripts that ever made me cry. I said, it'll win, it should win everything, without doubt. I thought it was absolutely, it's all the ingredients of what I like about the best of the cinema.
What does it say to you as an actor when a film such as Chariots of Fire becomes a success, and a film such as E.T., with the message that it has, the following year is a tremendous success? What does that say about what audiences are looking for these days?
Well, I think it's a great trap for people who make movies to be making them for what audiences are looking for, because that's what all these surveys do. And that's why there's so many duff ones we produce. I think it's the kind of reflection of it is quite healthy, and that they're looking for the enjoyment you get from doing something that you all think is terrific. And that's the appealing factor of making films for me. And hopefully when you get the right script and the right group, you make that kind of picture.
Isn't your 19-year-old son now pursuing an acting career?
Yes, that's right, Jason.
What kind of advice did you give him about success and failure as an actor?
Well, he had his bouts of being upset and a bit depressed, wondering why he wasn't doing anything and whatever. And I told him, I was okay because it would get much worse, and it will get worse. What about any advice to him about those who might say, well, yes, you're here because you're Sean Connery's son, trading on the name? Well, that's another thing that he had to make a choice about, whether he changed his name or not. But, that wouldn't have been too smart either, I don't think, because if he changed it after the first couple of things, they know who he is, and they'll make a feature of the fact that he tries to change his name. He's been misquoted enough he's been interviewed in different papers and things, and he's had his fingers burned a couple of times. Well, the only thing I hope he listens to me is about the situation concerning contracts lawyers. I think that is the grievous area.